And we're live. DJ, our BFF, that's best fabricator forever. That's right. That's where we are. Director of manufacturing for McKinstry. Not to be confused with anybody else. So it's great to have you here today with us, CJ. We're excited to get it going. We're playing around with a new platform. So if you're watching in, you might see some new things go on. In fact, we have a new one back. The audio is back. Trent, you want to bring us in and blow Jonathan's ears out and forget him for later? Ready? Here we go.
Oh man. Oh, how about a round of applause for our MC? Oh no. Toys are fun, right? I mean, how can you be a dork if you don't have fun toys? So
yeah. If you're not playing around with a new platform, you're not working hard, right, Trent?
That's true. And I mean, the drums are like 10 feet away from me, but still rim shot. I don't know. It's
you don't have to get up to do that.
No. I mean, it's AI. It's automated.
It's all AI now.
Just push the button. One button.
Yeah.
Export rim shot. Done.
CJ's not even really here. He's just an AI of himself.
Right.
He was just like, oh, this is a Dorkcast. Just put an AI on. I don't need to be there anymore. All right. Well, I am still on the train and the training train. So I have my Zip Fizz, although we had a little foreshadowing. There's going to be a new one coming. I'm going to try out some new hydration. And to all of our friends in the field, seriously, right now across the country, the heat is so damn high. Like, pay attention to hydration. It's key. Like, you can't just take breaks. Make sure you're getting hydration. Make sure you're getting electrolytes. Make sure you're getting those things in there because we want everybody to be safe. We want everybody to go home. You're going to be tired, but let's not have you be dehydrated. So I got my Zip Fizz. Trent, what you got? What you up to?
Yeah. Travis, like they said in the Army, beat the heat, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I'm not really beating the heat, but I'm also on the sobriety chain here with Jeff. I'm still working towards some fitness goals, but I am drinking canned aspartame. I've got a Coca-Cola Zero Sugar on ice here.
It's on the rocks. You can say it
on
properly.
on many rocks,
Yeah.
many small barreled rocks. I have canned aspartame from our friends at Coca-Cola.
Awesome.
Travis, I'm sure you've got something more exciting sitting over there.
Well, I came. I'm two-fisting because I wasn't sure what everybody's train track was running on. So I did bring some water, and then if our guest decides to imbibe as well, I brought Paul Anner pills here. Brought them to hang out here in my closet, as you can tell. Without the virtual background on, it's a little bit of a cluttered room right now. So just have to address that for the 4 people that watch the video.
You got to step your office game up, man.
I mean, this is. I think probably everybody had it during COVID. This is the extra room that became the office during COVID and never really got tidied up before I took my new gig. So 7 hours out of the day, it's fine. The 1 hour a day I have a meeting. So CJ, why don't you go ahead and introduce your drink or your potential drink if you decide to crack one later, and tell us a little bit about yourself and McKinstry and what you do there.
Yeah, so I am also double fisting. I've got water, stay hydrated. It's still a little early on the West Coast here, but I know how much you guys grill people on the show. So I got some apple pie moonshine in case you give me some really tough questions. I have that from a trip back in Tennessee last year. So just keep it at the desk just in case it's one of those rough days.
Right.
Yeah. That's how you know you're in the industry.
Yeah, you got to be prepared.
You're out, yeah.
I'm CJ Bester, the director of manufacturing at McKinstry. I've been with McKinstry for a decade now, which is kind of crazy to say. Prior to that, worked in aerospace at Boeing, and then in a chemical distribution company prior to that. So, but really most of my work experience is in the kind of MEP space, and kind of my background is in engineering management, studied at Gonzaga University, and then came up through the project engineer, project management route. And so did that for a few years, and then kind of had an interest and aptitude in the VDC space. So I like to tell people I'm I know a ton about detailing and I can't draw shit in Revit. Like, don't ask me to actually do anything, but how database objects can connect to estimating and those things I've got a pretty good understanding of. So I kind of oversaw our detailing team for a little bit there down in our Portland office. And then most recently moved up to Seattle early in COVID to move into this role as director of manufacturing. And so I support all of our fabrication facilities across the enterprise, as well as all of our VDC teams. So that's 4 facilities, detailers. At peak, we're usually at 60 to 70 detailers and 200,000 square feet of fabrication space and mechanical piping, plumbing, sheet metal, orbital, a little bit of electrical here and there. So definitely keeps me busy.
Yeah.
That's just a few people to
That's
worry
a few.
about.
Right. Yeah. They're
Just
a
couple.
decent sized company up there.
Yeah.
But you hit on something right away, and I think I'll tee it off. Kind of your entry to the industry, and I kind of know how mine went, and with a different way in, kind of more through the hands-on, through the trades. And then I'm kind of like, so your approach is a bit miles apart from mine. So I'm interested to hear, when we walk your shop, we see this impressive facility and we see all these trade workers and all kinds of people down there. And it just seemed like people had really good things to say about you. It seemed like they trusted what was happening. I think like that kind of appreciation of somebody, I feel like I probably had a leg up being one of those people. But can you explain how did you kind of step into the wolves' den there? And
Yeah.
I mean, you had to have looked like an outsider a bit, but you made it hain. I mean, you guys.
I maybe still do. I wear a collared shirt now, and in my prior roles, like I was wearing slacks and button up, and this is the most casual position or company I've ever been in, which is, I love it. It's awesome. But I really got my start with McKinstry when I was a senior at Gonzaga University. I got partnered with them to do a renewable energy analysis on Gonzaga's campus. And so I got to know kind of what some people at McKinstry, what the company stood for. And, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do out of school. I knew I wanted to focus on driving waste out of a process. Right. And, I think I was originally thinking maybe I'll go into like a more manufacturing role, but there's waste everywhere. And as we know, especially in construction. Right. And so as I got to know the people, the organization, the culture, I was like, hey, this would be a really awesome place to work. And so I interned during my senior year and then moved down to Portland for a full-time role after that and kind of never looked back. And so, the organization has afforded me the opportunity to really be like boots on the ground and get out to job sites and really be a servant leader for the craftsmen and women that are out on the front lines actually putting this work in place. I enjoy some of that in my spare time around kind of crafting things and more carpentry work and laser engraving and those sorts of things. But like I have such an appreciation for what our tradesmen and women can do because it's pretty amazing. And so, however I can show up and support them with the right information, the right schedule, getting all the questions answered that they need to just be an enabler for them. And so I think that kind of approach to supporting those teams helped me kind of get some of that buy-in from the craft side.
Very, very well said.
Yeah. Well done. So you've grown into this role as director of manufacturing, and I remember from the tours when we had there, a couple of questions that kind of, there's a kind of a question, and then something I found interesting is, I mean, you guys were one of the early ones that I've seen that kind of started to take on this productization mindset of we're not just gonna crap out these buildings that we design. Like, we're gonna build some products that hopefully can get specified, that we can hopefully just sell straight out. So I was wondering if you could kind of maybe take us down that journey, and then kind of the question that also kind of comes out of that then is, one of the questions that we all have is like, well, how much is the right amount of fabrication? Because obviously it's a spectrum, and we can't always fabricate everything, and it doesn't make sense to fabricate everything. So kind of in both of those veins, how did you solve, or how did you go about looking at what is the right amount of fabrication, and then when did you start to identify those products that might come out of that?
Yeah, and I think we have a pretty deep history of prefabrication at McKinstry. I think a lot of that is enabled with a lot of our projects. The vast majority are design, build, delivery model. Not in all markets, but in Seattle, it's a huge portion, and then some of the other areas, it's more traditional lump sum work. But being able to get in early with the architect, and a lot of times it's our engineers that we can work with, so I can walk across the hall and work through a standardized product or idea around, hey, we're doing backflow prevention stations on all of these projects. Why can't we just get a standard detail that matches with a standard Revit assembly? And I'm not going to pretend to say that we're like there and we've got all of our products figured out, but I think we've identified where we want to go, and we're trying to get the right resources in place to get there. I think it's really challenging as a contractor I think a lot of people know what needs to be done, but making that level of investment to actually get the bodies and dedicate the time to really hash through it is something that's pretty challenging. And it's tough to do when you're doing it like 4 hours a week as a side project and not your main job. So, the second part of your question around how do we decide how much to fabricate, we've come up with and kind of deployed this levels of manufacturing approach. And so we have levels 0 through 6. And what that speaks to, 0 is like, hey, just components coming directly from a manufacturer, no organization, nothing cut or kitted or anything like that. And then 6 is like full modular components that would go out to site, like structural and everything
else.
You
have a rating scale for it.
That's
really cool.
And so the reason that I wanted to develop that early on was salespeople would come in and say like, hey, we sold prefab on a job. And I'm like, well, what the fuck does that mean? Like, what did you sell? And so what this rating system allows us to do is we have a playbook like the backflow prevention station I was talking about, and that specific play can be delivered at a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th degree depending on the constraints of the project. And so what we've tried to develop is a framework to have common language and communication with everyone in the organization. And we're still working on like getting everybody up to speed on that terminology, but I think it better allows the foreman and the project manager to make the right decisions for that job as to how far they should take their prefabrication, right?
That's actually really, kudos to you guys. If people are listening, what a fantastic idea. I think that to me in an organization, in contracting and in fabrication, like that makes way more sense as something I would want to rate out, do some kind of like RFP on versus the LOD schedule for detailing. It's like, people throw out the LOD stuff all the time, but it's kind of like, well, wouldn't your system kind of dictate what that needed to be anyways? If you're talking about, the 0 through 6 scale. So I think you're rating it to the end user or whatever,
we're looking through the lens of like a self-performed contractor, right? And so like, is something cut? Okay, that's level 1. Is it actually cut and assembled, right? Then it goes up a level. Are you adding more systems? And as you add more complexity, that adds more need to drive it earlier in the process, right? And coordinate a lot earlier with all the other parties to get to a full modular system or multi-trade racks or things like that.
Would that rating system versus, like, say, let's take those same like backflow preventer stations you're talking about or something like that. Would that change the way your engineers would input their design criteria if the intent was like a 2 versus a 6? Are you dictating that early on? Like, if it was identified as a 2 versus a 6 early, would that change the way your engineers are actually delivering
I
their
think
product?
it could. It doesn't today, but I think it could as you get into like the fifth and sixth level where you start incorporating structural elements into your prefab. So like that backflow prevention station, sure, it has like unistrut as part of it, but say it was part of like a more modular plumbing room that has other assemblies in it, that could impact it. But I think today, like it's more just plugging those in, and then it's part of the communication process between the detailing and project team and the shop team as to like, hey, here's the deliverables you're going to be getting. Here's what we want actually processed offsite versus what we're going to do on site.
How do you manage some of that? If you, I mean, are you mostly doing design yourself, or how do you manage that when the design comes from elsewhere? Is it kind of more traditional, just take the design as it is, throw it against the wall and see what sticks?
No, I think we will still kind of deploy our standard approach. So when we have a job that comes in, we go through a pretty extensive build planning process. So we have build plan facilitators that are people that were really good at planning projects that are from the trade, that help the project team, PM, foreman, go through like, what is your build strategy going to be, regardless if it's McKinstry design or design third party. And that's where they'll go through and highlight, okay, these are going to be rack systems. These are going to be just standard clevis hangers or however those systems are hung. And then that's used to communicate to the VDC team and the shop team down the road as they get a little further along. So
okay, so because I've heard of other companies that basically have like a fabrication czar where everything comes through and they sit down with the foreman and they say, this is what you're going to fabricate these areas in here. But you have like a whole team that does that and sits on implants.
Right. Yeah, we've got like kind of regional based, right, to support those. And some, you get all sorts of people leading projects, and so certain people may be new to McKinstry and new to how we actually do certain approaches, and others have been here for 20 plus years, and so they don't need a ton of help from that facilitator. But that facilitator has been a super important role in how do you deploy when you have a new approach that comes up, right? Like one of the things that McKinstry is working on is prefabricated hangers, right? I mean, I think we're like towards the tail end of the industry of we should be doing some sort of prefab hangers at scale, right? We have pockets of it, but we don't have a standard approach that we've deployed across the enterprise. And so when you have a new approach come up like that, how you actually communicate it to all of the teams is a pretty big challenge. And so those build plan facilitators are key to be able to, they have touch points with all of these projects so that I don't have to go meet with 120 foremen and talk about this new approach.
That's funny. Yeah. Hangers are like the X factor in our industry, man. I don't know. It's crazy. It's, a lot of times it's 30 to 40% of our labor, and we just never, I just think, CJ, every shop we walk, you see a different way. There just isn't a consensus win.
And
like,
every visit, every fab conference I've been to, that's what people find the most fascinating too, is everybody wants to go see what the hanger workflow is.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember back to early days of Contact Crew and the road shows, and a whole they did a whole talk on it, like on hangers and standardizing on the fabrication and standardizing on the ordering of the parts and the cost savings that they were achieving from that. It was wild. And I'm surprised every time, as somebody who's not in that world, that it isn't more adopted, that people aren't farther along in that process, because it seems like it's so much. But I think there's a lot I don't understand about it.
I think, and CJ, I'll be interested. I'll kind of give my piece, and I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this as well. But I think it has a lot to do with like a fail-safe mentality, right? Is it kind of like, I think as contractors, we still design everything to, it's like, it's all a fail-safe. It's like, if it can't meet the perfect criteria that we're looking for, and then we look at past projects and we look at the pitfalls, the problems, if we can't get everything to meet like this perfect scenario, I feel like we just fail safe, and that's why we go to maybe easier ways. Like you see the people who Modern started doing where they were like doing a rod and putting a clevis on each end and shipping the cutting station out to the job. To me, that's a fail safe, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not taking it all the way to the level that we know that we should be able to do with modern BIM and VDC, but there must have been enough problems along the way that they're like, this is our fail safe. Like, we know we're getting a percentage of the productivity gain, but
yeah, it was Lonnie Compton and Buck Davis. And Lonnie was talking about the $300,000 savings they got because they standardized their hangars. They predicted out through their past history and their current workload for the future what they were going to need to order, went to their distributors and told them. And the distributors said, if you can take delivery every quarter, then over time, here's the price drop we can give you. And he's like, it showed $300,000 in savings. And I was like, why is everybody not jumping on this? But I think it's a lot, like you said, Trent, there's a lot of it fail safe. We don't get to fail in a lot of what we do. So CJ, I'm wondering, we're going off on a tangent.
Fail. No, I'm interested in his opinion on that as well.
I mean, Trent, I totally agree. I mean, I think it's one of those components where it's one of the earliest things you're doing on the job. And so it allows you to get set up for success or failure, depending on how well you execute it. And so, I think sometimes it may be, oh, we don't want to spend the VDC budget, even though you're, modeling some of those hangars in. And so it's, or the timing's not working out where you're having to make assumptions because you're still in coordination. And so there's some reasons or excuses there as to why it doesn't happen. But I think, at a broader scale, giving yourself, in like Modern's approach, I think it gives you certain outs so that if you don't have the amount of information you need, or if you haven't gotten coordinated to a certain point, you can still get some of the gains without having to scrap the whole thing completely. And so what I've seen from our teams across the enterprise is we have some teams that are on a very repeatable, like data center type project, right? And they will cut it at the exact length, and they've got adjustability based on how the building structure is, and it's worked awesome for them. But then we'll take that same approach and you're trying to apply it to a post-tension slab, and they don't have that same adjustability that you do in maybe a steel tilt-up structure or something like that. So I think there's some nuances there to it. But I do think, Trent, you're right, spot on there, that there is a fail-safe there. And
I think it's interesting too, that as you like taking something on like hangars or sort of the other changes you were talking about taking on, how do you roll that out and manage rolling that out across a really distributed team with, different leaders in each area with probably different project types in most areas, right? You're probably heavy in data centers and some and hospital work and others and other things and, other areas. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. And I think part of it is not underestimating how important communication is. So when we have a change effort like prefabricated hangars or deploying a new technology platform or, changing from AutoCAD to Revit, we come up with a communications plan that goes through, okay, what are the affected parties kind of at the front lines that will actually be using the tool? And then what are some of the other groups that are maybe beneficiaries of new data or information that's available from this new process? And then we kind of stack rank that and figure out, okay, how are we going to communicate with this group? Is this through build plan facilitators? Is it through a monthly foreman's meeting that exists? Is it through a ops manager cohort? Because we got to inform project teams as well. And so, it's definitely a challenge, and I think trying to get organized around that, because it's not feasible with the size of a lot of the large MEP contractors, including McKinstry, to have me go to every single person and explain the why and the what and the how. And so I've got to be able to tailor a message to each of those different audiences, because why a project manager might care is totally different than why a field foreman would care about doing something like prefabricated hangars, for example. And that's been a really, like, I've learned that in the last couple of years, and it's really challenging and time consuming to do, but super important if you want to be successful.
We haven't paid Nathan Wood in a while. I think he just did a whiff him. What's in it for me?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got the shirt on though, Nathan. So I think we get credit for promoting
Partial,
at the same
there you
time.
go.
So it's like a balance, like, so we can.
But yeah, but how do you get buy-in? You make them a part of it. I mean,
yeah.
If all of a sudden their opinion matters and all of a sudden their opinion was actually a part of what's happening, you know, maybe like they actually got to, you know, someone like CJ can go to it's like an open forum to them, you know, they can speak their mind. And then it's amazing how much more successful it is when just that happens. And I mean, and I think a lot of it is mindset. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and be the guy that says that people purposely tank things, but for some odd reason, when some of it was their idea, it tends to work better. So take that as
even the feedback, right? Even the feedback you get, CJ, has to be a little bit more constructive than destructive when you whiff them it, when you give them what's in it for them and what they can learn.
Yep. And I think, you know, there's times where certain things you're going to deploy and there's not a lot in it for a certain subset of people. And so what I've found in those sections or those kind of areas is you really got to make sure that the senior leadership is bought in and they're able to communicate the why that we're doing this for the broader company, even though it may not make you weld faster or process purchase orders quicker or whatever the example is. And sometimes hard for those teams to understand, like, hey, this is improving the broader McKinstry, even though it's actually adding a little more weight to your team, like I said, for maybe processing POs at a line item detail, for example. So,
yeah, that's one of those ones that kind of just the transparency and having the senior leadership say, like, listen, this is going to keep us profitable or help us with, you know, in that light item detail. I can imagine there's something to do with, you know, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and getting full payment and et cetera. It's just taking the time to explain it. That's half the battle. Sometimes is like some of the shit that we end up throwing at them. They're like, this makes no sense. Like, why the hell? What is this for? It makes a whole lot of difference if you can say, like, look, I know this actually isn't helping you necessarily. In fact, it's adding some things to you, but hey, we're getting paid on the back end better, or we're able to, you know, order more consistently, track, you know, whatever it might be. So it's a balance. I have to say it's probably, you know, your time at Boeing versus your time in this industry. There's got to be a bit of some parallels and some really big, like, oh, wow, that doesn't work here. And I wonder where that's divergent, or what has helped you from that past, and what maybe where you're like, oh, I got to scrap that. It doesn't work that way here.
Yeah, I think the I guess we call it like manufacturing mindset or lean manufacturing principles. I think in the aerospace industry, like, it's very widely accepted that, like, that's an approach to drive waste out of the process. And I think in construction, there's sometimes a little bit of taboo around, like, lean practices. And so, you know, I tried to absorb as much as I could during my time at Boeing and some of the other just like studying and reading I've done outside while I've been at McKinstry. And I like to try just to kind of embody or think about what the end goal is of those different processes, and then talk to the shop floor or whichever team I'm working with about, you know, how are we going to get organized around X, Y, or Z, and not necessarily call it like, hey, we're doing a 5S event, but getting to the same type of end state without trying to use the branded kind of different components of lean. And I think I've seen better success in that approach with our construction teams.
Yeah, I think
it's
some
a
of
tailored message, right?
Right.
That's they preach the lean stuff to the guys in our, you know, the people, the men and women in our industry. Like it's just not the same. You know, we have all these people from CJ, like from your past, like the aerospace industry, you know, the people that are preaching lean, and I think I've said it on the show before, Jeff, right? But it's almost like these consultants that are from that industry that are coming and telling us all this stuff. It's almost like they're taking us to fat camp, and they're like, "Hey, you're fat." It's like, yeah, well, what do we do about it? I mean, I don't think that they can actually tell you what you need to do to.
I'm not fat. I'm just big boned.
Yeah, well, you know, it's kind of like, well, yeah,
it's true. I mean, right?
I know,
right. I'm here for a reason.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just had fun covering this on the crew in that respect, because there's this whole thing about like, well, we don't build cars in our driveways, right? We order them. And I'm like, I've always had a problem with that analogy. Like, you just can't, they're very different, but I'm going to give away something that's going to come out on the crew here. KP Reddy and I were talking from Shadow Ventures, and he said, okay, but if you turned around to your customer, your owner, and was like, okay, and in 5 years, you're just going to get rid of the sucker and buy another one. Because that's what we do with a car.
Although that's not all that far from the truth in some areas with buildings.
I mean, maybe a little bit, but like, I mean, the same is like manufacturing an iPhone. I just went and got new iPhones, and I got on the plan that I'm going to throw this thing away every 18 months. Could you imagine if you told anybody in this business, oh yeah, well, we're manufacturing your multi-family home now, but in 18 months, you're going to have to get another one. Like, we have a different set of requirements here. And to your point, to bring it back, CJ, is I think your methodology is good, because some of the early consultants, like Trent's talking about, didn't understand the differences in our business and beat people over the head with it. And I think we're now seeing more of the new lean, types in construction that have an understanding for what construction really is and how you apply lean to that process. To your point, right? It's about the ends. It's about, continual improvement. It's about, not holding on to things, to broken processes just for the sake of it. There's a lot you can do without saying 5S.
Yeah.
You want to turn a group off. Tell them, I'm going to bring what are they? The black belt in
there we go. Yeah.
Six Sigma black belt.
Right.
And that's like, okay, we're going to turn off our brains and we're going to bring our just angst right to you.
Can he beat Zuckerberg though? That's the question. Can he beat Okay. Sorry, I had to.
I think, maybe the last piece I'll add on there is like, we have a industrial engineer intern this summer, and she's working on some automated shop layout scenarios, right? So the first thing that I had her do was take all of the inputs that you need to put in: processing time, transportation time, setup time, all that jazz, right? And there's like machines and jobs and all this stuff. And I said, hey, we have to get that in our construction terminology lingo, right? So like, when you say a job, what does that mean? Because that means something way different to the person on the shop floor than it does to this program. And so we've been working through that glossary of terms before we even get down on the shop floor and do some time tests to see how long it takes to move pipe or ductwork from point A to point B.
By the numbers, back to the basics. I love it. I mean, it's all about that common language. Yeah. I mean, even where you go, like it's still hard to explain. Even like people get caught up in the words, it's like you use the word package, you use the word spool and assembly and this and that. And even in our industry, there's people who are calling everything different. I mean, so yeah, I mean, you almost have to tailor it to the individual processes, all the words, even to a glossary. I think that's genius. I mean, that's the only way you're going to actually be able to like reduce the waste and influence the change at that level. So it's a really good start.
So I was hoping, I don't know if this is a clever or a terrible segue, but you've been doing this for a while. You've built some standards. You've obviously you put a lot of work in on the tech and information side. And in CJ, we've had quite a few conversations at recent conferences about data. And I know when we were out there for the Fab conference, you're starting to use data to back up those stories, to show where those improvements are happening. Talk a little bit about your data journey and kind of what you're looking to do with that moving forward.
Yeah, so our data journey, I'd say, I mean, construction companies generate a shitload of data, right? And most of it is unorganized and in like daily reports that are handwritten and no way to really know what was going on. And so in 2018, we started a construction innovation team that I joined, and one of the main aspects was trying to get a handle on how do we organize our data and kind of create this data lake, right, or data repository. And so we put a lot of effort into looking at some of those existing processes like daily reports and figuring out how can we actually get that into a structured format to then inform business decisions. And I think that the key aspect there is like you want data to help inform decisions, right? You don't just want to collect it just cause. And so we developed a field daily report app, although the first iteration of that was actually a detailing daily report app that would allow our detailers to put daily logs in to understand how much time was dicking around on your machine because Revit crashed 3 times, right? And
that never happens. Whoa, whoa. No.
Yeah, and so we did that, and that had some great success. And then you integrate into timesheets, and then we jumped into the field side, which is a much larger deployment, and start to understand trends of like how many impacts are you having on projects from a daily basis or a weekly basis. And we've been able to build in some workflows on. I get pinged every time somebody logs that there was a VDC or a shop impact on any project across our company. And so then I can go into the details, look at pictures, and then we can do kind of a root cause analysis on that. And so, that's a couple examples of like our data journey. I think we still have a long ways to go around organizing kind of all of our productivity metrics and like how do you standardize your cost code or phase code structure across all of your project managers and then be able to harvest that for future work. That's a really challenging. I think there's some contractors that are definitely further along than we are. We've taken some passes at it, but developing that standard work breakdown structure and then having people actually follow it.
That's the harder part. That's actually the harder part.
It is. I mean,
it's so hard, and
it's so critical. That's
critical, but it's also. I hate to give them the credit here because I've been doing a lot of this work for the last couple of years. It is an art form as well. From what you estimate in is not the art form per se. I wouldn't call it prescriptive, but that's where like dot I's, cross T's, do things certain ways. But buyout, field, deployment, the labor side of things, and more of what's happening in the fabrication shops controlled. But man, the art form of the rest of it is difficult because you want them to deliver and have it, but you also need to measure it. So there's like some golden thread stuff that in the data that's really hard. And
I don't know about art. Have you seen estimating in the MEP world? I mean, that'd be like one of those abstract, those paintings you look at where it's like the big glob. I mean, yeah.
A beautiful Excel spreadsheet. Yeah.
Right.
But it's what you have, right? Your project team. It's like you get this, like you said, CJ, this data. I mean, some of it, right? It's like, here you go. Here's the job. By the way, here's what you bought it for. The quantities are probably like 70% accurate. But I mean,
but you're also right, CJ, you only have half the story, right? You get what the GC gives you. Right. So there still can be, depending on the contract method, right? Design build is great that way because a lot more integration, a lot more collaboration, team together. That GMP, it's sort of like, no, that's your area. And we've got this other magic that you don't need to know about. Although I honestly, I was at Advancing Precon a couple of months ago, and I think we're going to see some real interesting wars that are going to help you in that area and help change that abstract painting method of estimating, black magic, as it were, into some really straightforward, because we can't have that golden thread of data if it doesn't start at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. I mean, in the tech world, you know, and I'm gonna call them out, I guess. Why not? If any of them listen, but when it comes to the MEP industry, estimating technology, there's not a damn thing that's happened in 10 plus, 15 years. I don't even, it's all pretty lackluster.
It sounds like it's ripe for disruption though. But
I think it is. But I mean, it's a challenge, right? But most big things are. But there's definitely not been a lot of innovation in that department. I mean, BIM always had the bad name.
It's still better than BIM.
I mean, BIM makes estimating look bad at this point. I mean, BIM has at least, like, people have tried to tackle the problem. Estimating has just kind of been like left alone this whole time while everybody's been doing this BIM thing.
Yeah, Trey, I feel like people are gonna want to jump to AI, and they're gonna be like, oh shoot, we need to know how much things cost to be able to actually like leverage artificial intelligence. And so then you got all these archaic,
Aren't you just gonna take all that shitty spreadsheets and just upload it into ChatGPT? It's gonna figure it out for you, right? Isn't that how it works?
Is like, if you have a team of if you have good project teams, good PMs, good good project teams, your executives may not even know how messed up your estimating is. I mean, it's that's
they most likely. I mean, we let's not call out McKinstry here, CJ, but they might not want to know. It's one of those things where you're like, you open up that room and you're like, "Oh, we shouldn't go in there. Just shut that door." Nobody looks behind the door.
People get comfortable making money, right?
I think it does get more challenging. Like, if you've been estimating a certain way and are profitable, there's like a lot of resistance to change, to want to do a newer process, right? If you're like, hey, let's not disturb it because we're still winning work and we seem to be making our margins. Right. And so it's probably one of the most, like, maybe golden egg type, like, oh yeah, we don't want to touch that. And at a certain point, it's going to get touched.
Yeah, I think at some point it gets recognized as the squeaky wheel that I hypothesize it is. I think, like I said, for so long it's been BIM that we focused on. And I know that BIM is still a problem for a lot of people, but it's gotten a lot of attention and there's been a lot of strides made in that department. I think estimating is kind of like the new frontier in our industry. I think there's some things that could happen. So challenge out there to the technology teams. If anybody wants to,
I'm hoping we get to show a little bit of that at some point, because I've talked to a couple of folks that have new stuff coming. So it will be. I think it's coming. I think it has to. I think the scarier part is that this siloed chain that we have has to somehow connect together if we really wanted to do enough. And that's scary, man, because who's gonna take the leap first? Like, CJ, are you guys gonna take the leap? And okay, here's our data, and not all of our data, but here's a lot. Let's play in this role. It's a pretty scary leap.
It is, yeah. It's a lot of risk to take on, and so I think it's part of the reason it hasn't developed super far, because so many contractors have their special sauce of how they add in variables for this or that. And so, we, like, for example, McKinstry has an internal workbook that we use because so much of our work is conceptual estimating where there's no design drawings yet, right? And so you got to know super high level how to price this building out, which would be really tough for a software like a takeoff software to do, because there's nothing to take off. And so that's kind of the conceptual tool, and then we've got a more traditional product that's used for the standard takeoff. So
yeah,
well, and that we did hit on it though, but that group is probably one of the most resistant to change that I've ever experience. Like just keep my fiefdom, leave me alone. Don't try to inject any new tech into that. There's always money left in the bucket after I'm done bidding a job. Leave me alone.
Yeah. I mean, even you're trying to get them to do blue beam like takeoff and tool chests and exporting versus doing the hand stripping. Like they came around to it eventually, but yeah, it's a tricky area of the business for sure.
Yeah, and it is some of the black magic because that's where the money gets made. And
Right.
I've done a lot in the conceptual side of things these days. The interesting part is you need the horse to pull the cart, because to conceptually estimate better, you need consistent historical data that's done really well and cost coded really well to inform future design and give you the flexibility to understand the variables of that flexible design. It can't just be a couple of little things. There's a lot, you said it earlier about, the difference between if you're going to, those backflows, and if you're just going to fabricate that, or if it's going to be a part of a structural room, that's going to impact sort of the subtleties of where the estimate goes in the long run. So
that's a good point, Jeff. I think you nailed it. I mean, they haven't changed because we can't tell them which way to go. Right? That's
yes.
Do better. How?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, touche. I think you got me. That's well put, Jeff. I mean, I think it's until the project teams can tell them what. Yeah, I mean, that's well said. I mean, we've identified the problem, but hey, you need to turn. Which way? I don't know.
Hey, I'm not in the map business. I'm just in the you're off track.
2 points, Jeff. I wish I had the little pardon the interruption
ding,
thing,
ding, ding.
Or whatever. Give you a couple points. Yeah.
Well, so all right. Well, we've decided that the black magic of pre-con and estimating and takeoff is tough. What else is killing you, CJ? Let's just get it off your chest.
Oh man. I think the trying to navigate through all of the technology that's out there is challenging, and the amount of sales reps and people trying to get a hold of you for this new technology here or there, and I tend to get so saturated from it that I'm like, I might be missing a good opportunity here. I just don't have time to look through all of it, and so that's where I think it's important to keep your eyes out when you go to conferences and things where it's like my head's in a different headspace out there, and I'm kind of open to dialogue around new products or new technologies. Whereas when I'm trying to do the day job, I don't need you calling me every 2 days asking if I want help with an estimate. I'll reach out to you, but I don't. And so that's a big challenge for me right now. And another one is just as the company continues to grow, back to a part I said earlier about how do we communicate out changes to the organization is how do you make sure that you're having those pipelines of communication so that you can effectively deploy a change, right? It'd be unfortunate if every single new idea you had took 18 months to communicate throughout the organization, and then you're iterating on maybe a 6-month cycle, and so all of a sudden you have no shot at getting everybody up on plane. And so I think that's some of the growing pains we're going through right now. And we've got an operational excellence team that's doing a great job working on getting some organizational pieces in play there. But gone are the days of being able to just call a quick meeting with 20 people and say, this is the new way we're going to do it. Okay, ready, break, and go and kind of conquer that. So it's just part of growing up as an organization.
I hear a lot about that. I can't take another salesperson calling.
I was going to jump on it, but I figured you would, Jeff. I was kind of.
Dude, I hear that a lot, and it's what I appreciate in the MEP world, especially given my history there, and bouncing between the MEP, GC, and owner world. You guys do it really well. Nika, SMACNA, MCAA, the MEP innovation. You guys show up, put yourselves in the headspace, and you're willing to share that openly. But there's a balance too. Like, how do we you can't be at every conference, you can't be everywhere, and you can't weed through it all, man. That makes, and yeah, I don't even know how better to do. Yeah, it's really tough.
There's a lot of stuff out there, and I mean, let's be honest. There's probably even better tech out there that I'm not even. I mean, that any of us may not even be aware of. But it's kind of like the cry wolf thing, right? I mean, there's a lot of really dumb and predatory tech out there too, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that there's some good ones that get kind of lost out in the pasture with the rest of them, unfortunately.
But I think one of the best ways I've seen to tackle it, and I'll ask this a bit of question to CJ then too, is like what we're doing right here, like build a network. I'm assuming you guys are part of a peer group. I would ask if you have an innovation team inside of that peer group, but also you have to build your own peer group of, and it doesn't always. It's mostly like you want similar contractors, but even like we've talked about, with Trent when you were with North, like you were not on the same volume size as Helm, but you were doing some very innovative stuff. And you have some, to TJ's point about, trying to change it when it's a 20-person team versus a 200-person team. But so you had some advantages there, but we also had some advantages at Helm with the amount of horsepower we're able to put things. So, CJ, are you, I would assume that you do quite a bit of formal and informal networking then to make sure you cast a big enough net?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so McKinstry is in a couple different peer groups at different levels of the organization, right? And so the great thing about the role I've been in the last 3-4 years, and even when I was in our construction innovation team, is it allowed me to get out and meet a lot of people in the industry, right? And so, I've been able to meet all of you guys prior to this event and get to shoot the shit, so to speak, on new technology that's out there and what's promising, what's not, which I think is a really good way to learn about maybe what we think has some real promise to it. And so, yeah, I do, I'm on kind of the conference circuit, if you will. Whether I love it or not, like, remains to be seen. But I'm out there, like I enjoy most of them, and it's progressed over the years. It used to be a lot about the classes, the content, and as I've grown in my career, it's more about the networking, getting to know and just reconnect with people that I may not just call up or email any given time, but understand what they may be working on and things like that. So I'd say when I go to conferences now, it's 50% or more about connecting with an existing network and expanding that. So
I think even within the peer group, CJ, you almost have to make it a point in the peer groups to have each contractor have a rep that's kind of testing new things too, though, because early on, like when we started bringing a lot of this tech in, Travis, like early in our ventures with contractors, a lot of us peered up and we mimicked what we were doing. But to a point, you got solutions implemented like at different levels of the company. And a lot of the people in that peer group started to look a lot like the others, right? It was, I think, like organically, they started to mirror each other. But at some point, the peer group kind of gets done, or it gets like, it's like everybody brought what they thought was best in show at the time, and everybody kind of did their thing. But all the while now, 5, 6, 7 years later, there's hundreds of new things. So, if you're not out there dipping your toes in the water constantly, you're not, even the peer groups get kind of stale.
Yeah.
There's a point. Testing has to almost be something that you continually do. So I don't know if that's
Trent, that's a good question though. So I'm going to ask this from the software side. Like, CJ, what's a great way for not a great way. What is a responsible way for an innovative new software company to approach peer groups? Because we know, like, I'm living this world. We know that ahead of us, let's be honest, there was a lot of bull in the China shop. And it was like, now you guys protect that, tooth and nail. Like nobody gets in. If you're wearing a software logo, you don't get in. But there's a lot of new ones that need to get in. How do we go about that thoughtfully and in a way that'll work? Like, I don't know that anybody has the answer, but I figured I'd ask you.
I'll take a stab at it. We'll see how it goes. So
All right.
the way I'm thinking about it is if say I started a software company and was trying to solve some awesome business problem is doing, and I think a lot of companies do this well, is getting engaged on pilot levels. So using existing relationships, or if you don't, then getting out to conferences and building some relationships. And then if there's one or two of the companies in that peer group that you can actually drive some value to through utilization of your tool through like a pilot program or beta testing period, something to that effect, to where, because if contractors actually see the value in your tool, they're going to be like your biggest advocate for it, and want to continue to leverage it and drive it. And so sometimes it's just that first introduction that's really challenging. And I think if you can show that you understand what some of the challenges are, I know I'm more likely to actually sit down for a half hour and speak with someone if it seems like where they're coming from, they can actually like pinpoint, oh yeah, this is a challenge that you're having, and this is how our problem solves that. Versus a generic sales email that says, hey, send me your drawings and I can estimate them.
Yeah, I would say that too. Now that I'm working on the association side, what we find most contractors prefer, and even in the like the education space when we're planning our conferences and whatnot, is don't just show me a screen of logos of who you work with.
Right.
Come with a case study. I'm definitely much more likely to listen to you as a vendor if you can say, hey, our XYZ product, I've been working with CJ Best for the last couple of months, and he's found value in this way. Rather than just say, hey, we got this really whiz bang estimating thing. By the way, McKinstry is on our website.
Mm-hmm. And even if you can take it a step further, if that pilot company says, oh yeah, let people contact me, right? Because there's nothing more than like, oh yeah, case study, but no, you can't reach out to this company to talk to them about how it really went, right? We're just going to show you our published white paper on it.
And I want the software companies to know that the contact thing is real now, right? So guys like CJ, guys like myself and Travis, we're with, those people are out there, and we do our homework, and we all know each other. So gone are the days where you can come in a room with someone like us and be like, oh yeah, McKinstry's doing this, and this with our, I'm going to know before you even, and that's just another piece of value that the contractors have figured out with the contact people. So
yeah, it's beautiful when it happens, because we do see it happen on our end. You'll see, I hear the stories of, oh, well, somebody called me up because they saw it in their peer group, and boom, it's good. And you've got to control, there's got to be a balance there, and you've got to know their problems, etc. So yeah, I think some of it's flushing itself out now that you actually have context that can call bullshit,
and don't be afraid. And this is to the context, to the people. This is kind of my little disclaimer. If you get that salesman who's predatory, I guess, what do you want to, you call him whatever you want. They're out there, right? There's great salesmen. Sales works, right? Sales is a real thing. It's a real practice. And when it works, it's beautiful. But there's bad salesmen out there. If you get those guys, if you're still interested in the product, don't be afraid to ask for a different salesman to that product. Or don't buy from the, that's how you defeat that practice. You're perpetuating the problem if you give them the business. So sorry to all the bad salesmen out there that I probably just completely whipped, but don't buy from those people. That's what it comes down to.
I will be frank. I have probably bought a lesser product here or there just because their competitor annoyed me in the sales process.
Yeah. I might still go after the good but I would not be afraid to say, hey, I want someone else. I don't want to talk. I mean, hey, what's fair is fair. I mean, I won't be rude about it most of the time.
Most of the time.
But I was gonna say not all the time.
No.
Yeah. I mean, it's important. That's how you squash bad habits. That's how you squash bad practice. I mean, we
don't reward bad behavior.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested too. So what CJ at McKinstry, what does that beta world look like for you guys? Is that something you guys have put a lot of process and structure around, or how does that kind of work? How do you guys handle that
in terms of bringing in pilots? And
if you're like, hey, look, okay, you've broken through the barriers, you've passed all the checks and balances, what does that process look like?
Yeah, so we have, it depends on the product, but we have it's called Dawson Ventures. So we have like a research and development arm of McKinstry that's out in the market looking at all sorts of different solutions, not only just for construction, but, we have a whole energy side of the house. We've got service, we do national renewables and all sorts of things that you could look up on the website. But they support all of those teams. And so that's kind of the first level of vetting. And then if they see something interesting, they'll bring it to our kind of construction line of business product manager that we have. That's an interface between the operations team, the Dawson Ventures, and then the IT group. And so they will a lot of times help organize a pilot effort or project that's going to get set up, and they'll work to identify like who are those right stakeholders to pull in, and then is there a cost associated with it? Many times there is, whether it's licensing or just the cost of people's time, right, which can get really expensive. And so and that product manager is key, because they're that bridge that's trying their best to really understand what are all of the challenges in the business and make sure that whatever gets bubbled up to the business is really going to drive value. And so that's kind of that's the process at McKinstry. It's evolved over time. We're on like our third iteration of what that looks like. And I think, we continue to make it better every time. I don't think we have it all figured out, but it's definitely working pretty well so far.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's pretty well organized, though. Far more organized than a lot of places we've been and seen. So, but I think you have to be, right, given that level of enterprise organization and that many business units. You can't just, have a contech in the closet that tries a few things here and there because they saw it from Trent at MEP Innovation or Travis at AU and go, oh, we're going to try that, just cause. It's not how it works.
Yeah. Not anymore.
All right. Yeah. No, not anymore. Right. Well, we're coming up on the end. I kind of want to give you an opportunity. You've kind of talked about some of the headaches, some of the things. What are some of the things you're like super excited about? Like what's got you excited for, the next 6-12 months, if not a little bit longer?
Yeah, I am super interested in robotics and automation in the fab shop and on the job site, but given my purview more in the fab shop and more so around material movement and less around the actual performing of the work. So whether it's welding or bending or whatever it is. And so we've got, our first tooling coming in next month. That's an automated loading system for one of our lasers. And so really excited to kind of see how that works and enables some more throughput there. And then, I'm super interested in how we can leverage AI, whether it's generative AI or the large language models. I mean, I'm not educated enough to know all the different styles, but I know enough to know that it's going to be hugely disruptive, and I think in a good way to our industry. And so really excited to see how that what kind of products come out of that and how we can potentially do some of our own kind of custom development to support and solve some of the business challenges we have. So
the two huge areas.
Yeah.
I love the focus on robotics and material handling, because you're not replacing people and automating stuff is not proving to be as easy as people thought.
Right.
Robots cool, AI cool. Put them together, it scares the hell out of me. Right?
You know what's
Yeah.
funny? I'm usually the guy who's going, yes, that's really, really scary. But CJ, I would spin and agree with you on what the large language models and the trends in AI allow may be the key to unlocking some of that voodoo that you do so well in pre-con, because it has the ability to handle semi-structured but not completely structured data, and to draw the comparisons and and use the tools to, take what is garbage and actually make it not garbage and make it line up in a way that might show us some things we didn't see. So that's that one's cool to me. On that side too, we can always say if we're going to be Wall-E or Terminator, but I honestly think Wall-E's a hell of a lot more likely than Terminator. Just
That's
my
gonna
opinion.
be up to us, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it all comes down to. It's up to conscience. I mean,
Not everybody's going to do the hard 75 there, Trent. Go back to literally
it won't
picking
matter. It won't matter.
picking up Starbucks on the way home, and I was looking at that cup, and I'm thinking, it kind of looks like that cup they were carrying in Wall-E, doesn't it? Don't stop me, Starbucks. I love my Starbucks, so don't get me in trouble. What's the boys' thoughts on robots? And I like that on the material movement. You got something coming in on that, CJ?
Yeah. So we actually were. I'm not going to say who the manufacturer is, but it was supposed to originally arrive in time for the fabrication conference last year. So that goes to show you how many issues they're having with some of the components. But it's an automated loading system for the fiber laser that allows us to load a full pallet of material. Actually, you can load 2 pallets. There's 2 loading slots, and so you can run essentially lights off production with it, right? So you can run if you need to cut out 100 base plates, you can load all that material on there up to whatever the weight capacity is. And then it has suction cups to load and then offload from the shuttle tables. So it'll complete your whole burn list, or it'll complete your burn list or run out of material, whatever happens first, right?
That's cool.
And so that I'm pretty excited to get that going. And then there's some other components you can then bolt on with that. Like say we were running into the issue where you run out of material a lot for these cut lists. There's a whole tower you can then, integrate with the system. And so you could have, 12 slots of material instead of just 2, right? And so, I think those are large investment dollar items, but if you can have the throughput through the shop, it can definitely pay for itself.
Yeah.
And when it comes to robotics, I do think that, obviously everybody wants to, Atlas, have the humanoid and everything like that. But I think that, those are the big swings that, beyond even moonshots. But I think that the right place is to have those cobots, those helpers, help us do more with the limited amount of people that we've got.
Yeah, I don't think a $600,000-$800,000 robot that can go get your tool bags necessarily a good expenditure. However, I will give them credit. The arm that they created and the leg that they created to make that jump can become a part of something new that's pretty innovative and pretty powerful. Like if that arm was on a small bot that rolls and can go grab material from the truck and put it down and roll it back to you. All right, there's something I can use. So I like that. Any other questions, boys, before we let them go?
No,
I feel like we've put you on the hot seat today, buddy.
Yeah. No, that was a good one though.
This is great. I didn't have to reserve the apple pie moonshine too much.
Right,
So I'm at a good spot here.
All right, good. Not too much apple pie moonshine, although that's one, if we get back to McKinstry, we're going to have to try that apple pie
Yeah,
moonshine.
we might have to give that one a try.
It's pretty good.
I'm a big fan of that show. I watched the
Oh, the moonshiners.
Moonshiners. Oh yeah, I'm obsessed with it. I know it's fake. Don't. I mean, I know they couldn't put that on. I mean, it's like reenactments. I get it because you can't
it's
really
reality
do that
TV,
stuff.
which just means scripted TV.
Yes, which just means I get to hear cool flavors of moonshine on a regular basis, like cherry pop, and I like the apple pie moonshine. That would be a good one to try. So, CJ, you're on the hook next time we're all together.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I'll deliver.
All right. With that,
we'll be up that way soon.
Yeah, we will be.
Yeah, we'll see you in September.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, we're all done. So this was episode 68. We'll figure out the title later. Thanks, CJ Best, for joining us and educating us on the manufacturing in the MEP space.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, CJ. It was great.